I love the NBA trade deadline. It's great for content. It's great to finally see where all of these rumors that we've been seeing for months are going to end up. And every single year, I do a video just like this. I predict what I think is going to happen at the deadline. Last year, I did okay. I predicted that the Mavs were going to trade KP and shake up their roster. And then, of course, I predicted the Simmons trade as well. And in today's video, I'm going to go through a couple predictions that I have that I really, truly think are going to happen at this year's trade deadline. And I'm going to begin by talking about the LA Lakers. Now, here's the prediction. I think that the Lakers are going to use at least one, if not both, of those future first-round picks in a trade at the trade deadline. Now, that could be in a big deal. Like, for example, there's been rumors about them possibly acquiring Zach Lavine with Russell Westbrook in both of the first-round picks. There's some other stars available out there as well, or only using one of them, maybe sending one to the Pacers if they want to trade away either, Buddy Hield or Miles Turner, something we've talked about in the past, some kind of move like that. We talked about this a little bit earlier in the week, talking about how acquiring Rui Hachimura, although it didn't seem like that big of a deal at the time, did possibly signal that they're seeing some promising things out of the season. They're playing much better. Anthony Davis is now back, and I feel like this is a team that wants to go for it a little bit. Like, they're only a couple of wins away from like the 5 seed in the Western Conference, and then they can even go up further than that by season's end. When LeBron is playing as well as he is, when you have Anthony Davis returning, who before injury was playing at an MVP level, and you have the opportunity to upgrade the roster in an immediate sense, and a roster that isn't going to get that much better over the next couple of seasons anyway, it feels like this is a group that wants to go and take some kind of swing. Like I said, some of those rumors are more interesting than others. I'm not going to stand out here and say that they're going to get Zach Lavine, or they're going to get Damian Lillard, or they're going to get Bradley Beal. Like, those are the big names out there, but the official prediction is one or both of those future first-round picks are going to get moved. I think there's a lot of teams around the league that see a lot of value in unprotected picks potentially that are that far into the future, even as good as Anthony Davis will still probably be over the next couple of seasons if he remains healthy. LeBron certainly will no longer be on the team, and the Lakers are really invested in this era, so those picks could be very, very valuable. I think they're going to move at least one of them. The next prediction now is about the Toronto Raptors. I really believe that something's going to happen with this roster, but to get a little bit more specific with the prediction, I think OG Anunoby is going to get traded. There's just been too much smoke. There's been too many rumors around him and around the situation in Toronto for them to just go past the trade deadline and have done absolutely nothing. Now, think about the last couple of seasons in Toronto. This is the second year now out of the last 3 that it has been dysfunctional. There's been some weird rumors. There's just been a lot going on there. Now, granted, a couple of seasons ago it was because of they couldn't play in Toronto. They played in Tampa. That was just an awful season. And then this year, they just haven't played well. They haven't been healthy. But whether it was the Siakam rumors in the past, now OG being unhappy reportedly, I think they're going to do something. I think they have to. And I think OG is the most likely candidate here. And he's a very valuable player, by the way. I know that there was a lot of people that kind of looked at the rumors coming out recently about them getting an offer that included 3 first-round picks in exchange for OG Anunoby and thinking, well, that's a lot for him. I think there's a lot of teams around the league that are going to look at this situation and say, okay, Toronto wants to move him for whatever reason. This is a guy that is still young, can guard, can shoot a little bit, and is going to continue to improve. And those kinds of players, those wings that are making between 17 to $20 million, that are still young, that are under contract for the next couple of seasons, that can really, really guard and are going to improve as shooters, those guys don't come around very often. And every single contending team or teams that plan to be contenders over the next couple of seasons, every one of those teams wants a guy like OG Anunoby. And so I think his market extends not only to teams like Brooklyn, any of these contending teams, Miami, all these teams around the league that could use another wing. It extends to them, and I also think it extends to teams like New Orleans, like Oklahoma City, that maybe have a little bit more of a long-term view, that view him as a guy that, yes, helps them this year, but whenever they decide to be good, whenever they decide that it's time for them to finally push all their chips in, again, I'm thinking about a team like Oklahoma City here, OG Anunoby is a kind of player that you're going to want to have in that scenario. So I really, really think that not only is Toronto going to explore moving him just because they need to shake up their roster in some way, they can get a lot of value, but I also think there's a lot of teams around the league that are going to look at him and think that either he's the final piece of their championship puzzle this season or will be part of one over the next couple of seasons. Next prediction now is about Chicago. We talked about them a little bit in the intro with talking about some Zach Lavine to the Lakers stuff, and the official prediction is I think that they're going to trade either Lavine or Nikola Vucevic. I think one of those guys gets moved at the deadline. As up and down as this team has been, where they play well against good teams and then they lose to not very good teams, and they've had a better record as of late, I think once it really comes down to it and we get closer to the deadline, the front office is going to look at the roster and realize there's no upside here. Like, there's no scenario in which you're better than like the 6th best team in the conference. And when you're in the situation that they're in, where you owe a first round pick, top 4 protected to Orlando this season, and you have all these other variables going on with the age of your roster, at a certain point, it might be time to shake things up. And for Lavine specifically, it would be weird because he just signed the contract extension. We've had trade rumors around him for forever. And for now, this to finally be the year that he gets moved, I understand that that would be a little bit weird. And it's like I said, it's kind of like the Toronto thing. Like, I just feel like there needs to be some kind of shakeup here. And I think they could get a lot in exchange for Lavine. Vucevic is a little bit weirder because he's an expiring contract, so the value might not quite be there. But again, if you're Chicago and you're thinking about beyond this season, you're thinking about, you know, are we just going to lose this guy for nothing in the offseason, or can we get a first round pick for Vucevic right now? I think those are options that they need to weigh. There's a lot of interesting rumors going around right now, as I said earlier, about the Lakers possibly trading, you know, Russ and 2 future firsts to Chicago for Zach Lavine. I feel like that's like the bottom level value for Lavine, even though he has had some injury issues. Like, he's still Zach Lavine, he's still an all-star, he's still an incredible scorer, and someone that a lot of different teams would be interested in. And even as valuable as those 2 future first round picks would be from the Lakers, I think there are other teams that would jump in on that and say, wait, that's all it takes. Here's what we can give you. If they had the assets, I would love the fit in Dallas for Lavine. That's something that's been rumored for a while, but it's just really tough to put together a trade for them that makes sense for Lavine. There's a lot of teams around the league, and I really think Chicago is going to look at this situation and realize they have to make some kind of change, and primarily it's going to involve one of those 2 guys. Next up now is the Atlanta Hawks, and I'm going to go ahead and go on a limb and say that John Collins, this is the year. John Collins is going to get traded this year, because it's not just that Atlanta wants to move him. It's not just that he makes a ton of money, but again, there's a couple of teams, especially in the Eastern Conference, where the vibes are just off, like Toronto, Chicago, and Atlanta. They need to make some kind of movement. I would be shocked if it's Trae Young centric, but just the drama around the team to me necessitates some kind of shakeup, some kind of move. And if they can get value in exchange for John Collins, a guy that they already think is overpaid, I think they will certainly explore that, and ultimately, as this prediction shows, go ahead and make that happen. Like, at a certain point, when a guy's been on the trade block for 3 years, you just kind of have to pull the trigger at some point and get him onto another team. I think Brooklyn is interesting. I think Miami is interesting. I think the Lakers, to a certain extent, are interesting, even though they just added Hachimura. I think there's a lot of possibilities here where teams could look at it and say, John Collins can play the backup 5 at times and supercharge our offense despite not being very good defensively there. He can space the floor as a 4. He's a dynamic athlete at the rim. There's a lot of teams, despite the price tag, that would be interested in him. I think even a team like the Clippers, teams that don't really care right now about the yearly salary of John Collins, I think would be willing to give up a first round pick for him potentially. Like I said, Brooklyn, maybe the Clippers, if they could find a first round pick somewhere down there, maybe they would make a move as well. I think this is the year. I really think the official prediction here is that John Collins is getting moved this year. Second to last now, the Sacramento Kings. The prediction here is they're going to do something. Like, whether it's Collins, whether it's OG Anunoby, whether it's something smaller than that, they see an opportunity here. They are legitimately one of the best teams in the Western Conference, not just in terms of record, but in terms of their overall basketball team. They're one of the best teams in the West, and this is a team that is desperate just to make the playoffs. Like, if the Sacramento Kings can have a home playoff game this year, like, it'll be a successful season. Hopefully they have an entire series. Hopefully it's not just the play-in game, but if they can have a home playoff game, it's a successful season. They break the playoff drought. They're desperate to make that happen. And I don't think they're going to be satisfied with just being, 8 or 9 games above 500. I think they're going to go out and be aggressive, not to shake up the entirety of the roster, a core that is playing really well, but more so to look into some of these future assets that they have, trading away a future first round pick or 2 to add another guy to this group to really propel themselves. Because I think they went from like, let's make the playoffs to wait, like, we could win a playoff series. Like, we could be a series away from the conference finals as the Sacramento Kings. They're that kind of good. Like, they're not there right now, but if they wanted to make one more move, I think they could start inching themselves towards that. There's only a few teams at the top of the West that have really separated themselves, those being Memphis and Denver, and Memphis has lost a couple of games straight lately. I think Sacramento has a legit chance to be a top 4 seed in the Western Conference, and I don't think that's something they're going to take lightly. So again, the official prediction is I think they're going to do something. And then the last prediction is, as you can probably tell by the entirety of this video, I think there's going to be a significant amount of moves at the deadline for two different reasons. One, I just think there's a lot of teams that can talk themselves into being contenders or semi-contenders. It feels like, with the exception of teams like Boston, Memphis, Denver, teams that are truly at the top of the league, there's a lot of other teams in that second tier that view themselves as conference finals teams. And so they're going to be aggressive going out and making moves. And that's kind of a stacking effect. If a couple of other teams are aggressive, then you feel like you need to catch up, and then you need to catch up. And we'll see a handful of contending type moves. And then the circumstances around the draft this year, with a lot of teams kind of wanting to tank towards the bottom, they're going to be trading away veterans. Guys are going to be available for cheaper than they normally would because teams want to get worse and they desperately want one of the top two guys in this draft. And there's just going to be a lot of veterans available and a lot of contending teams that are going to want to make moves to try and put themselves in a better position. I think those two things combined together create a very active trade deadline. Those are my predictions for this season. Drop some of yours down in the comment section below. I'm interested to see what you guys have to say. Thank you guys for watching the video, and I'll see y'all next time.